one of the albums that we have been most excited about over the past couple of months has been this one right here. It's been VII, STURM UND DRANG by Lamb of God. And the moment's finally here, but there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. There were a lot that were answered whenever we heard the, first couple of singles. But prior to the release of this album, Lamb of God made 5 of the songs, 5 of the 10, half of this album, available kind of as almost like a piece-by-piece basis. An interesting idea, but with half of the album already being out there and delivering a lot of expectations and actually pushing them further to the moon, it actually means that the other 5 have their own bit of expectations that are sort of attached to them, the 5 we haven't heard. So there's a lot that could actually happen here. There's a potential that we could listen to these 5 songs, these 5 that we're unfamiliar with, and this could end up being one of the best albums of the year. But on the flip side, we could listen to these other 5 songs and, well, they might not be all that good, and then what are you left with? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to actually listen to the album. Lucky for you, that's what I do for a living. Listen to this stuff and let you know how I feel. So this album has a lot riding on it, but there's also a great history behind it. Mainly because this is an album that, well, may not have happened if things would have turned out a little bit differently for Randy overseas. Now, I could sit here and annotate all of the different track reviews that have been done, but that's, once again, kind of not why we're here. Instead, this is something where not only do we have to examine the 5 songs that haven't already been dropped by the band prior to this album even coming out, but also we need to examine how this album flows. Let's get started and kind of see where this whole thing leads. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice whenever you pick up this album and turn it on is that the first 4 tracks are all songs that you've already heard if you've been really keeping up on your singles lore. Still Echoes, Erase This, 512, and then Embers. Embers, of course, being the track that features Chain and Moreno from the Deftones. Now, overall, these are songs that have enough of a cohesion to them and enough just sort of minor and subtle differences with little nuances that have been thrown in to really captivate some of these tracks. And I'm looking particularly at Erase This with the wah pedal. But this is something where the real highlight of this is in the fact that it is a very, very aggressive start to this album. Something that you would expect from Lamb of God, but this is one that still maintains that sinister snarl, that almost above and beyond the Call of Duty nature that these tracks really felt like they possessed whenever they first dropped. Embers, though, will take first-time listeners to not only this song but to this album kind of through a loop and give them quite the hell of a punch of a curveball. Right about at the 3/4 mark of this track is whenever Chino really introduces himself as an individual voice on this track, and it's kind of like walking down an alleyway and your friends are telling you that everything is just fine, there's nothing coming, and then you walk into the road that's right by that alleyway and get smacked right by a bus. It's something that really takes you aback and kind of really makes you sort of stop and have a bit of an eargasm. And we know all about eargasms on this channel. There was a couple of albums that certainly have purveyed that for us, but there's also a whole video dedicated to it. Search for it. It's kind of interesting. But then as you continue onward, Footprints is the first song that you don't really recognize. And while it has a traditional Lamb of God vein to it, it's really nothing that's all of that special. In fact, it's a track that, on an album such as this one, that so far has delivered 5 songs that definitely feel very capable and very powerful in their own individual way, is kind of lackluster. It's one that just sort of seems to exist there. But then with track number 6, you get into Overlord, which was the 5th of the songs that we have heard. The first 4, of course, being the first 4 on the album. Overlord is probably the song that, for me, really defines what this album really meant not only to Lamb of God, but something where it also showcased where they wanted to experiment a bit musically in order to sort of convey some deeper and different meanings behind their lyricism. This is one that really is more of a reflection about this whole me first, me, now attitude that really is purveying now that we're in a land full of smartphones and everything like that, where we're all basically glued to lives that are sort of virtual as opposed to experiencing the life that's in front of us, which is kind of a dangerous idea. I love this track based around the fact that Randy does clean vocals on this track, and it's something that's not perfect. And that's sort of the reason why I dig it as much as I do, is because of that imperfection. This isn't something that really needed to be subjugated to polish. It's something where that rough and rugged exterior to the bite of these clean vocals actually adds into a little bit more of a subtle undertone that we expect everything to be perfect. And yet, whenever it's not, sometimes it gives us something to complain about that's a bit unnecessary and unwarranted. Not to mention, this is a track that will launch right into its traditional Lamb of God tendencies with a very, very aggressive middle and latter passage before kind of going back to that very cleanly sung chorus right before the ending point and then the ending themes of the song. I love the dynamisty that this track really boasts, simply for the reason that it's something that's out of their element. It's something that you don't hear out of this band, and something that actually, after hearing it, I really hope to hear a lot more of this in the future. I don't really want this to be something that's sort of one and done from them, because it has just a really great feel to it. Not to mention, I dig Randy as a singer. I think that it's something that a lot of people could learn from. But then you start to finally get into the stuff that you don't know if you've been following your singles and doing your homework. You get into Anthropod, you get into Engage the Fear Machine, you get into Delusion, Pandemic, and then you get to Torches. I have to say that songs such as Engage the Fear Machine really have that anthemic feel to it, and I especially saw this in Delusion Pandemic. The anthemic feel is something where you can definitely tell where the message kind of goes, not to mention it's also one that I love, especially in Delusion Pandemic, just the direct nature of a more spoken word passage within this track, where essentially the message is one that I've kind of preached myself, is the fact that what we do here is what matters. No one else gives a flying fuck. What we do, or in this case, what you do with your life while you're on this rock, while you are walking around this earth, is the only thing that's going to matter in the long run. That's the only thing that's going to mean shit. And if you end up doing nothing with it, then you're only going to have yourself to blame. You know, nobody else may give a fuck, but that doesn't mean that you should just not give a fuck and give up. It means that you should not give a fuck and do everything that you can in order to make this experience worth something. You know, actually contribute a little bit. Then you move into Torches, which features the lead singer from the Dillinger Escape Plan offering his work. And Greg is one that really is able to coincide with Randy a good bit in order to give this track a bit of a unique take to it. This is one that has a very interesting construction to it. It's kind of almost hard to put into words, but it's one where it seems as though Lamb of God has subjugated themselves, very rightfully so, by the way, to that final track philosophy, where you really want to go out with something that does have a little bit of ambition and difference behind it, something that's really going to leave an impression. And I think Torches actually is able to really qualify for that, and does so pretty darn well. It's a track that just really stands up by itself, and Greg's addition only magnifies that. And I like the fact that they weren't afraid on this final cut to, instead of going the hyper-aggressive route and trying to end it similar to, I don't know, some tracks that we have heard from the past, such as, oh man, now I'm starting to draw a blank. I'm thinking specifically of tracks like from Master of Puppets, either that or any of the major metal albums that really go out with just their most aggressive work. This is instead a track that is a little slower. It has a little bit more of a mid-tempo process to it, not throughout the whole track, but through most of it. And based off of that perspective, really offers something very unique, a very unique experience right there at the end, the finito, the finale of the album. Now, there are a pair of bonus tracks that are in the deluxe edition, but these are ones that definitely feel right at home in the traditional Lamb of God catalog. I would comment a little bit further, but why ruin the surprise? So what have we learned from this album? What have we learned from sort of this experiment of releasing essentially half the album prior to the whole thing coming out, basically leaving us to hope that the other 5 songs are worth a damn? Well, the 5 songs are worth a damn. I will certainly say that. This is something where I feel like some of the stronger tracks were the ones that were selected and offered as singles, principally because this is an album that had a lot of meaning to this band. It's something where these messages and these different tracks were meant to reflect that there was a lot of thought and a lot of writing that was going on while Randy was incarcerated, but it was also meant to showcase with songs such as Overlord that there was just a lot of introspective thought, not to mention a lot of really biting commentary that were involved within this lyricism. And the band seemed to be not only right on board, but willing to adapt and sample some different sounds and some different things in order to really incorporate it all together. With the 5 other tracks, I feel as though there is some substance there, but a lot of them do feel as though they remain a bit within the construct of what Lamb of God is all about. And that's fine too. This wasn't meant to be purely an experimentative record. This was instead one that was meant to have a couple of experiments laced within it. However, I feel that the 5 tracks that we got sort of supersede the 5 that we didn't. Songs such as Torches and Delusion Pandemic certainly really pick up a mighty slack, but I feel as though the other 3 just sort of didn't quite qualify for the same workload. It was one that sort of did what they could, but kind of felt a little bit too similar to a lot of the other things that Lamb of God has done with their career. It didn't really offer too much of a new punch or a new bite to the formula. Based around that, this is an album that I would probably give an 85 out of 100 to. 8.5 out of 10 if you want to be a real nitpick stickler. Had a lot of potential to probably be one of the best rated albums of the year, and I'm going to tell you, this is still a very, very good score. It's definitely one not to sneeze at, and it's definitely one that could be subject to change before December comes. However, this is an album that I feel at some points just had a couple of lackluster cuts. But the ones that were not lackluster, the ones that really did showcase something really kind of new and interesting to the fold, really went above and beyond the Call of Duty, and that definitely worked to this album's benefit. But I want to know what you guys think about this disc. This is one of the most important albums that have probably been released so far here in 2015, and if you disagree with that, you probably don't understand just the meaning and the thought process behind this may have never happened. So I want to know in the comments below what you thought about VII, STURM UND DRANG by Lamb of God, a name in another language that I have completely butchered now twice in this video and no doubt countless times in the track reviews that have preceded it. So let me know what you thought, and I'm not sure what we're going to talk about tomorrow. It seems as though every time I have a set theory and thoughts and schedule in mind that something else keeps on popping up, like a new Bring Me the Horizon song or something like that. It's weird how that happens. But keep that all in mind. You're definitely going to want to subscribe because you never know what the hell is going to happen next. But it's almost guaranteed going to be something cool that you want to hear about. And please do hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, even if you disagree with my opinion but just thought the information was cool. You can hit the dislike button too, but it's not going to make you any friends, let's be honest here. I'll talk to you guys later. My name is CoverKillerNation, and I'm out of here.